All right. Well, good afternoon and welcome on behalf of the Oregon Project Management Advisory Board. Welcome to our additional session in this extra special spring that we're all experiencing in Oregon this year of our project management user group. My name is Anastasia Safranek. I am your coordinator and will be facilitating today. Let me start with a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, please mute your phone or PC if you're not speaking to help reduce background noise. And we encourage you to stay off camera so that the recording can focus on the slides. If you have any questions, you are welcome to put them in the chat, and my colleague Alan Thompson will be monitoring the chat throughout our time together. You're also encouraged to raise your hand or save some questions to the end. This meeting is being recorded, and a link to this meeting will be shared after the session and posted on our YouTube channel, where you're welcome to share with your other colleagues and encouraged to spread the word on our Wednesday sessions. Our next session is scheduled for May 18th, but today I have the pleasure of hosting a session on the timely topic of Enterprise IT Governance Committee process with our own Jennifer Hannon. Jennifer has worked in state government for over 30 years with several different agencies. She's held a variety of technical and project management positions during this time. She moved into her current role as the Senior IT Portfolio Manager with Enterprise Information Services in 2020 and works with the Healthy People Policy Area agencies. Jennifer, I'm going to hand the mic over to you if you want to share your screen and show us what we should know for this next cycle.
All righty, give me just a second here. Okay, you guys seeing my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
All righty. And as I am sharing today, I will not be able to see any hands up or the chat. So if you, whoever is monitoring for me, if there's information that comes in there that I need to pause, please let me know. So good afternoon. Again, my name is Jennifer Hannon, and we are going to talk a little bit about the prioritization process. When I started back in 2020 with EIS, we were just kicking this process off for the 21-23 biennium. And so that was quite an experience to have that be one of the first things that I got to sit on the other side of the aisle for, because in the prior years that we had done this, I had been out in agency land, as many of you, as a project manager with employment, and kind of got to see things from both perspectives. So today we are just really going to cover a slide deck that we have put together that kind of covers, well, in the next slide, I'll kind of go over a timeline, but we just want to cover an overview of the process so that you have some context. Many of you as project managers may be asked to participate or support this effort. And so it's helpful to see that context to kind of see where it fits into the overall budget process. And the timing is great because most agencies are going through their budget development right now, and they're getting ready to plan for their initiatives for the 23-25 biennium. And so this is just a great timing for some of the work that you may be asked to help with. Let's see, I am going to turn off my camera here for a sec and pull up some notes here. All righty. Okay, so today I really want to cover the different levels of governance that we have within the state, so you can kind of see where the prioritization fits in and how it supports those different layers. We'll talk about the timeline, so when materials need to be submitted, when they're reviewed, so we'll talk through the timeline. We'll talk about some of the thresholds for what must be submitted to the Enterprise IT Governance Committee. So if you don't know what EITGC stands for, it's Enterprise IT Governance Committee. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the matrix and the scoring. And for those of you who are familiar with some of at larger agencies that have project governance and submit projects, and they're sent through a scorecard and kind of scored on different criteria, this is a similar process. Probably criteria might look a little bit different, but it's a similar process in evaluating project materials and scoring them in different areas. And I want to do my best to highlight areas that I expect you will most care about. You know, the budget development process is a much larger effort, and so this is just one small piece of that. So I'll try to right size it for things that you would care about. Again, this is a generic slide deck that we use to cover kind of the prioritization effort with different audiences, different agencies. And so some slides I'll spend a little bit more time on, others we might fly through a little bit quicker. And then last, I'll talk a little bit more about where you can find some information. So if you do get pulled into this to do some work either on a business case or to answer some questions for folks that are working on this, I'll give you some information on some guidance and where you can find some additional materials. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the different layers of IT governance. So you can see here we've got really 3 tiers. Enterprise governance at the top layer, supported by our enterprise IT governance, and then supported by the agency governance. And I'll go through each one of those a little bit so you can see where the process fits in. Under enterprise governance, this is the highest level. So this is where the governor's priorities, enterprise leadership team, our state IT practices and guidance and standards, those all come into play here at the highest level. Supported by that is our enterprise information services, which is my team, and many of you are familiar with following our stage gate and oversight process for investments and projects. So that would fall into this category, and some of the things that we do here with our partners with security, strategy and design, data, and so forth. But then we also have this enterprise IT governance committee, and it's an ongoing group. It's made up of about, I want to say, 6 to 10 members, and they are executive leaders from a variety of different agencies. This time we have a kind of a group of new players who have joined the committee. Chris Couts with OHA is the chair, and Betsy Umholt from Department of Revenue is serving as the vice chair of that committee. And they will, for the next 3 or 4 months, they will be working with their peers to review the different projects that will be coming through for scoring for prioritization. And really, they're looking to make sure that these efforts align with the enterprise strategy as well as some of the IT strategies. And so that's kind of where that fits in there. And then many of you are aware of the agency governance that supports those efforts. So you may have your executive leadership team, you might have a governance committee, you have your executive steering committees and whatnot that fall into that category there at the bottom. For major IT initiatives that are going to be initiated or that are continuing into the next biennium that come through the prioritization process, they are scored on 3 different categories: technology and strategic alignment, business and people-centered approach, and then the agency readiness and solution appropriateness. These categories really haven't changed since the last biennium. There's been a few tweaks, and I can talk a little bit about the changes for anybody who has gone through this before. I speak to a little bit of kind of what the highlight and focus has been and where there's been some adjustments. We'll talk about that later. Okay, let's talk a little bit about timeline, because this is what really we've been trying to convey to agencies, because the timelines are coming up real quick. We've got about another month before we need to start working to review what agencies are going to submit. So really from the beginning of the year, agencies are starting to look at what are the initiatives that we're going to be spooling up over the next 3 or 4 years, and what budget asks might we need to put in place to support those efforts, whether that be a policy option package, or it could be that they're going for grants or other federal funds. But we look to have the supporting materials for those initiatives to really be provided to our office by May 31st. Now, back up here one sec. The budget instructions is a document that's released by the Chief Financial Office, the CFO. They publish that at the beginning of the budget cycle, and it really gives instructions to agencies for how they need to develop their budget, the technical requirements, and context around how that needs to be conducted. I think last biennium those didn't get published until May, so we're a little earlier this time around. They were published in March, and so that information is out there for agencies to review. The budget instructions indicate that project materials need to be submitted to EITGC by July 1st. But there's a lot of work that has to happen in partnership with the senior IT portfolio managers before that material is submitted, because we review the materials that are sent over from the agency, and we make a determination whether we can support the agency's scores and whether we feel the information that was provided is sufficient before it gets submitted over to EITGC. So that's what this June block of time really is needed to focus on. So we're really asking agencies to submit all the materials to us. That means they need to have an understanding of their policy option packages, understand what those projects are going to be, and then be writing those business cases and be ready to submit those by May 31st. So I just want to call that out, because a lot of times people think they have until July, when in reality we need the information sooner. Once EITGC receives those materials, they will review them. I will be called back in, and my fellow SIPMs will be called back in before the committee to present those proposals to the committee and walk them through the scoring, answer any questions they may have. And that happens really over the last 3 months here, July, August, and September. Any questions? I'm just going to pause there and see if anybody had any questions there. I'll pop back over into the room.
There are no questions as of yet.
Okay, I will just keep on going then. Okay, talk a little bit about an overview for the criteria of what needs to be submitted. So we already talked about timeline. Let's talk about what types of projects need to come through, as well as the materials that need to be submitted. One of the things that they're asking is for agencies to submit their strategic plan. I think that's kind of a new requirement. Not all agencies, some of the smaller agencies may not have a specific IT strategic plan, or they may be in the process of developing that plan. We are asking that if they have one, to please submit that along with the materials. It's one of the things that we look to assess whether a project that's being submitted not only aligns with maybe the governor's priorities, but it also aligns with their own organization and their agency's IT strategy as well. So the materials that need to come through, and we ask that these be submitted through the PPM tool, is the IT initiative form, a business case, and then the prioritization matrix. And we will take a look a little bit more at what that prioritization matrix looks like. Many of you are familiar with what the business case looks like. There is a template. It's out on our website. It has been updated to include a little bit more focus on some of the areas that we'll be looking at in the prioritization effort. So if you're looking for a template for a business case, it is out on our website, and you're welcome to take a look at that. In terms of what needs to be submitted, and this is where there's some subtle nuances, and even today I received a question and I wasn't quite sure how to answer it, but generally we're looking at any project that has a value over $1 million. Doesn't matter the fund type. A lot of times people will say we get federal funds, so is it just our portion of it? For example, if you have a 50-50 federal funding and state funding, it is the whole. It's not broken down by just what is the agency or the state portion. The other thing is, well, what if it's in-house development and we're not going out with a contract, so there's a specific cost value for a contract? Even if it's in-house development, the value or the amount of the project, if it's over $1 million, valued over $1 million, then it's expected to come through prioritization. The other thing, and it's somewhat separate but related, there's another requirement that agencies submit a spreadsheet, information technology report, that is all of the POPs. So slightly different. While you assume many of the large projects will have an associated POP, policy option package, submitted, not all POPs will have an initiative that goes through prioritization. I hope I said that right and that makes sense. So the POP, the items that are listed on that spreadsheet may actually have more than the projects that are submitted for prioritization. But I wanted to call it, those are two slightly different but related things here that we'll talk about. Talked about the strategic plan. We talked about the items that needed to be submitted here, so I won't go over this again. Technology report. This is an example of the spreadsheet. I know it's an eye chart and it's small, but it kind of gives you a sense of kind of what it looks like, I guess. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the prioritization matrix, because along with the business case, and the business case really is what we look to, and this is what I'll stress. We get the ITI form, but the business case is really what provides evidence of the score. So as we look through technology and strategic alignment, there's two subcategories here: alignment to strategic plans and technology best practices and priorities. This scorecard is a little different than what we've seen before. We tried to add some bullet points here underneath that really highlights and makes it more transparent. What are the questions that are trying to be answered, what they're looking for when they're looking at the scoring. And so we would look to the business case for the answers to these questions. And then over here, when we talk about the subtotal or the scoring, we're really looking at getting a 3 if you're fully aligned. So if the business case and the project fully can describe and support all of the elements under this category, then one would assume you would get a 3, right? If it's mostly aligned, you'd get a 2, partially a 1, and if there's nothing in there, then you would get a 0. So that's kind of how the scoring works. There are some cases where some of the criteria may not be applicable for the project, and in that case, it may still qualify to be a fully aligned for the applicable criteria. So let me see if there's anything else I wanted to cover on the overall criteria itself. Oh, one of the things I will say, there's been some changes in this area, really looking at some of the new policies that have come out within EIS over the last couple of years. So we've had, policies around IT security for a while. Those have been out there, but we do have a new modernization playbook. We also have some new data guidance out there, and our cloud forward strategy has been published in the last 2 years. So those are some new items that we're also looking for agencies to be aware of and to make sure that their projects are considering those frameworks and guidance as they plan their projects. And this is where we would be looking to score those in that area. All right, so there's 2 other sections. Previously, we had a section that was devoted wholly to diversity, equity, and inclusion. That has been a hot topic. It's been an item that they really are trying to promote agencies to be out there working with their customers, working with their partners, understanding what the needs are, involving and getting community engagement and feedback. And so instead of having just one category, that criteria was really worked throughout the scorecard. And so you'll see a lot of that fell into this category, as you can imagine, with people-centered. Talking about, is it a people-centered approach? Are we really getting out there and working with our customers to understand what the project might need to deliver, what the benefits are? The other one is business process transformation. So does it really have an impact on the processes within the agency and how they do their work? And then the last one is really looking at investment risk. And so that's really asking the question, what if we didn't do this project? What would be the negative results, or what things would be impacted in a negative way? And what is the risk? Okay, last category focuses on agency readiness and solution appropriateness. So these is kind of, I wouldn't say the kitchen sink, but it's a lot more focused on how will the project be implemented, or what are the processes that the agency follows? What's the maturity of the organization? Do you have a project management office? Do you have project managers on staff? Do you have resources available? Is there a change management approach? Do you have the capacity to run the project? So ask those kinds of questions in this section. Okay, so that kind of covers the matrix. I want to cover, this is something new that we're offering up to agencies this year. So let me go back. I can't really see it on this slide. The matrix really has the criteria, the scoring guide, and then over here to the right, you would list each project in a column and then put the scores down vertically along those different criteria sections. We are also offering that agencies can use a scorecard template, and you would create one of these for each project, score it the same way, but over here in this right box, the agencies would be able to provide some evidence and justification supporting their score. So if they went through here and let's say they, based on their assessment, they feel like they should get a 3, but maybe they didn't feel like they could answer each one of these questions, or it wasn't evidenced in the business case, but there's some other materials that they want to leverage or point us to that would give us confidence that they have met this criteria. One example might be having an established project management methodology and some practices that they can point to some other documentation that they want us to consider. They could put some of that over here in the right-hand side, and then that is helpful for those of us who are doing the analysis to be able to factor that in and see why they felt, what justification do they have for their scores. If they want to point out maybe an area in the business case where it was covered or whatnot. And we have found that's been very helpful in the past. DHS and OHA used this format last time around, and so we've kind of taken that and provided our own template here. So that is something that's available for agencies to use. Alrighty. These next slides really call out some of the new policies that I had mentioned earlier. So you have the governor's diversity, equity, and inclusion action plan. And so there's a toolkit that is a part of this that is a great opportunity for agencies to use that toolkit as they plan and implement their projects. So I'm just going to cover these real quickly because these are located out on our website, but it's just an awareness for agencies that these guidance and plans and frameworks are out there, and they're welcome to go and see them, and as they plan their projects to reference them as they continue.
We have a few questions finally. Do you wish to wait till the end?
Well, I'm just about done. I'm just going to scroll through these real quick and then I'll pause, okay?
Okay.
All right, so we've got the cloud forward framework and strategy. We've got the modernization playbook and the Oregon data strategy. So again, I'm not going to cover these slides. There's materials out there. You're welcome to go see them. I just wanted to call them out and call them to your attention here. Okay, I'm going to pause here. I have a few more things I was going to talk about. This is my last slide, but I'm going to pause and see if you guys have any questions, because really, in a nutshell and an overview, that is kind of the broad overview of the process. So I'll just pause there. What questions do you have?
There are two questions. The first one is, have you seen this type of scorecard used for other POPs, non-IT related requests?
I have not. No.
Okay, the second question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. I've seen scorecards used similar to something like this, but the questions are very different.
The second question is, where could we find an example of a completed business case? And I notice you have business case template on this slide.
Yeah. So we have a template out there on our website, and I can pop out there here in a little bit and show you guys. Many of you, I'm assuming you probably are familiar with how to navigate out to the EIS website and go out there to our templates. I'm happy to post something in the chat though that has the link. But we do have the template out there. It's a very nice template to follow. It has guidance and instructions, and it includes, just some guidance on how to complete it and what things should be considered as it's filled out. Anything else?
Those are the only two questions.
Okay. So I just wanted to reiterate a couple other things. We do have some companion guidance in addition to the budget instructions. We do have some guidance that we have developed specifically for the project prioritization, and that's out on our website. Business case template is out there along with the matrix, the spreadsheet, the prioritization guide, all of that information is out there. One thing I will mention, the scoring is done by the agency. So it's not like you submit the materials and then we score you. The agency is scoring itself. And then when we review that, we determine, can we support that score? Do we see evidence strong enough that, we feel comfortable saying, yep, we agree that they, scored a level 3 or a 2. And in my experience last time around, there were some things where agencies went both ways. They actually scored themselves lower. And I said, I actually think based on what you have here and what I know about your agency, you could actually have a higher score. In some cases, I'm like, well, I don't think I can support that. I didn't see evidence that you're really meeting these this criteria. And we've gone back and forth. In some cases, they've changed. Some cases I've changed. And some cases we've agreed to disagree. So it just kind of, that's what that back and forth really is meant to be, collaborative, because the senior IT portfolio managers are meant to kind of understand a little bit about the agency. We've reviewed projects with all of you. We understand how you do your work, how you follow your project management processes. And so it's not like we're coming in unfamiliar with kind of the agency overall. So it makes it a lot easier for those of us who've been around a little bit. Anything else I was going to mention? Oh, one thing, I never am super supportive of a project manager writing a business case. Usually I would think that might be a business analyst or somebody from the business. As a project manager, I never like to be put in a situation where I was having to write the business case. But in case you have to be called in to do that work, for some projects that are span multiple biennia, and they're a continuing project, but they are requesting additional funds, those also may need to come through prioritization. In some cases, you're operating under the same budget thresholds that you had from you requested the money in a prior biennia, you're still operating under the same budget. Now the changes, it's just the schedule is taking longer into the next biennia. My understanding is that those do not need to be resubmitted for prioritization. In the case where it does need to come through and there's new money that's being requested to continue the project, we may ask that an addendum be provided, because the business case was likely developed quite a while ago, and we may want to get some updated information about status or approach, or just new information is known. We may ask that there be an addendum that's created, so you might be asked to provide some information on those as well.
Do you know where we might find the mod playbook and cloud guidance?
Yeah. So I will share a link in the chat that will have our EIS website. And on there, you will be able to see all of those playbooks, all of that guidance, all those guidance materials are out there for you. They're not all on the same page. Our main EIS page has the primary guidance documents. The scoring and all of the EITG prioritization materials is in our forms and templates page. So I can post this the link in there, but it might be easier if I post those back out there. I'm happy to do that. So that's it. That's in a nutshell the overview of the prioritization exercise. Happy to take any other questions if anybody has any. Also, if you guys, any of you find that you are pulled into any of these conversations and you're happy, we're happy to have you reach out to us, and we'll go over a little bit more things in detail if you find that you have questions later.
We have no further questions in the chat at this time.
I am out here on our website looking for the site. I will post it in the chat here in a second.
Yeah, that would be great. And I was just thinking, Jennifer, within our different agencies, is it typically the government relations team, or what teams are most likely to kind of get the first go round of this, or does it start at your agency and then go to ours, or how? Can you talk to us a little bit about how that works?
Well, I think every agency is probably going to be different. You know, DHS and OHA are the primary agencies that I work with, and they've got multiple teams of folks that work on this. Smaller agencies, you're probably going to have a different set of teams. Generally, the way this works, though, is, well, and I will say, in all my years of working in state government, the budget process has never been super well understood for me as an IT person or as a project manager. It's just the magic that happens within the finance office and budget folks and the executives. But in the last few years, in some of the larger projects that I've worked on, I've had more engagement in the budget exercise and kind of understanding how they come up with what the initiatives are going to be, how they plan their policy option packages. But generally, that is where things start, is the agency will, the different divisions within the agency will understand what their policy option packages are going to be, those that have an IT component, and then they'll start asking the questions, are these going to result in a project that's going to hit those thresholds of $1 million? And then that's really when agencies, and it depends on what teams they put together, right? At DHS and OHA, I think they work with, they have a business engagement group that is really out there working with the different divisions that I think facilitate this. And they have people that are point to submit these materials. Other agencies may have one effort and they may not have another one that's large for a few more years, right? So it just depends on the size of your agency. If you're working with a large agency, you may have several, you know, projects and multiple POPs that are submitted for our review. So.
And the mod playbook the link has been added to the chat. And there was the CFO budget instructions that has also been added to the chat. And Joseph Donahue pointed out for ODHS/OHA, yes, we do. So that goes with what you were just talking about.
I looked on here to see who the participants were. We have Ed Erebus here. I was going to talk a little bit about, you know, that might be one thing I could talk a little bit about, and I'm going to put Ed on the spot too, because he might be able to chime in here. The reason we do a lot of this work, when EITGC takes a look at these projects and looks at the scoring and the ranking, we're asked to come in and speak with them about that. A lot of that information then goes over to CFO, CFO, and LFO in support of those policy option packages. So a lot of this work does support and provide insight to whether POPs and funding will be provided to the agency. So it's an important exercise that really plays a part in agencies, you know, getting the budget that they need to do some of these big efforts. Anything that you would add, Ed? I'm going to put you on the spot here in terms of how your office fits in here.
Well, I think that as I understand it, the prioritization exercise is primarily to inform the governor's budget that comes over, and the priorities that in the current governorship, it's a she. Next year is going to be, we don't know if it's going to be a he or a she. Or a she or he, whichever way you want to say that. But the primary purpose is to prioritize the executive branch's desires for budget. We take that into account. The legislature takes that into account. The Legislative Fiscal Office budget analysts look at that stuff. I don't think that Sean, Bob, or I really have much of an influence on anything that's been prioritized through that matrix process or anything like that. If that's what you meant, I don't believe that. But that's, so when I was doing the job over at EIS, it was more along the lines of, let's make sure that we have our executive folks kind of in line with what the executive branch wants to invest in.
You see the POP list that gets generated as well, don't you? That list of POPs. not just the budget, not the prioritization and all the different projects, but the list of the policy option packages. Yeah, Sean.
Everybody, just wanted to segue on what Ed Airbus indicated. I'm Sean McSpaden from the Legislative Fiscal Office. There are folks on the line that I haven't yet had a chance to meet. Essentially, Jennifer, you asked whether or not we see the list of policy option packages. Kind of stepping back, we try to work as closely as we can with you and your colleagues, Jennifer at Enterprise Information Services, and then at the right time in the budget development cycle, we actually work together to create a common list of information technology projects that both of our offices, believe are made their way into the governor's recommended budget, so that we can all be focusing on the same set of projects. And certainly as questions come up from each of our respective groups of stakeholders, we try to work together with your P3 leadership to identify points of contact in each of our offices on those projects, so that we can do further analysis, we can make recommendations formally or informally, that kind of thing. But certainly it is certainly a progression from the prioritization process that you've been focused on today. Not necessarily a handoff or a throw over the wall kind of exercise, but there is a transition from the work that you all do to the Chief Financial Office and the Governor's policy advisors to formulate that budget. And then, as Ed indicated, we have a unique situation this time in that the budget that is ultimately distributed or transferred to the legislature in December later this year may or may not be the one that the future governor decides to carry forward. So there is a statutory deadline for the incoming governor to provide the legislature with that person's budget I believe in the February timeframe. So it's gonna be a little messy, the sausage making this time around, but we do try to work together, and absolutely the prioritization matrices and the work that goes into the business cases ultimately is very important to both of our offices. Certainly people make decisions based on different factors. Jennifer, obviously you and your colleagues, when you do your review, you probably don't have insight into whether there actually will be enough money to fund these projects downstream. And we're in the same situation, Bob and Ed and I. We try to stay in our lane in our office, and ultimately, by all accounts, of course, the current biennium was one in which state government, generally speaking, was flush with money. The next biennium may be dramatically different, and so it will be important, and people should not expect for every project that ended up on the list, this prioritization matrix will ultimately make it into the governor's budget. I mean, there'll have to be some real choices made about assumptions regarding how much money is going to be available.
Fun. Appreciate that added insight. Somebody else have a hand up? Oh. All right, Anastasia, I am done with the presentation. So we're a little early, I know, but I will make sure some stuff is posted there. I haven't had a chance to really get out and look at the chat, but I will make sure that stuff is posted there.
Yeah, no problem. I really appreciate your time, Jennifer. I think attendees are just eager to see different examples and thinking about it in their own pop cycles that they're going through right now. So again, I just want to send a special thank you to you all for attending this additional session. I hope you gain a greater understanding for the Enterprise Information System budget prioritization process And again, a huge thank you to our volunteers, such as Jennifer, for speaking today. You'll find additional information and resources in the chat, and we will also post this recording to our Oregon Project Management Advisory Board website and our YouTube channel. We're always looking for new speakers, so please feel free to reach out if there are certain subject areas that you would like to speak on or know other folks to speak on, and appreciate your attendance today. Thanks again, Jennifer.